So remember, we're not zero down there. Close, we're not zero. We're zero up top. And then as soon as we get back to the heart, pump, we can pump again and get pressurized. That's the whole point. You lose the pressure the entire way through, and then you pressurize again and go around and around and around. Okay, so we're in a venule, below pressure, but not zero. We're gonna be zero up here, so I know I'm gonna steadily drop pressure the entire way back up. It's gonna keep dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. Now, what had happens to these red tubes over here? They were splitting, right? Getting smaller and smaller and smaller. What's happening on this side? They're coming together, right? You have to see this happening. They're joining together like two little rivers, making a bigger one. They're flowing together. Confluence. Confluence. Flow together. The other side, we have splitting. You know what splitting means. People don't know what confluence means. Flow together. Confluence of ideas. Two ideas have come together into one. Use it in your English paper. Sure about it. Confluence of blood. So we're going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger tubes on the way back. On the way to the tissue, we get smaller and smaller and smaller arteries, but now we're going to get bigger and bigger and fatter and huge veins coming back. The vena cava are the big, hugest ones. Okay, and then the rest of the story is pretty easy, actually. We know we're going to drop a lot of pressure this way up as we keep going, but whether you're a large vein or a small vein, you're all the same. Capacitance. So what's that have to do with? What do you mean capacitance? What's capacity? Yeah, how much you can hold, right? So here's the giveaway before we even get there. 67%, about 2/3 of your blood. I don't know what numbers they give you in your notes. That's the way I learned it. 2/3 is carried in a vein right now in your blood, in your body. 2/3 of your blood's in a vein. It's not in an artery, and it's certainly not in your heart, because the heart's too small to hold 5 liters of blood. So most of your blood, I learned 2/3, 6, whatever, is in a vein, right? That's what they're called capacitance vessels. They're huge. They're gigantic pipes compared to arteries. We'll see them in a minute when we compare the size, but they must be giant. And there's more of them. There's also more veins in your body than there are arteries, lots more. So the venous system, low pressure, very low pressure, zero at the top. Blood's coming together, but barely. And they're all the same story. They're capacitance vessels. Okay, let's go look at some notes here. Let's go back to the caps. See what we have. 1 cell thick, perfect. I didn't mention it, but we should remember from A&P why anything would be 1 cell thick. It's for diffusion to occur. That is always the answer when something is 1 cell thick. That's the mechanism of exchange, is diffusion. It's not active transport, passive transport. It's just simple diffusion. Yeah, there's other mechanisms to trade other things, but O2, CO2, they trade through diffusion. Okay, we made this point earlier. If you're going through a cap and you're a red blood cell, there's only enough room for 1 at a time. We made that point earlier. This would be a problem for persons with sickle cell. If your cells are sickled like this and you're trying to squeeze through those, you're going to get stuck. And everybody behind you is going to get stuck. And this is going to cause some problems. I don't really care about that. Probably talked about avascular tissue. Heals really slow like cartilage, but I'm not going to get into that. What do you exchange besides O2, CO2? Well, that stuff down there, nutrients, hormones, and waste. And other things we heard about. But it's mainly we talk about O2, CO2, but there's other things that are traded here as you exchange. Okay. I think we got it. Capillary beds more. Most of them are what we call trues. That's the one I showed you. You know, you just draw them like little kind of watermelon things where it connects from one side to the other. This is a true bed. That's what you see there in this picture. It's a true bed. You see a lot of little vessels, up to 100 of them, exchanging. Remember, you could, though, if you didn't want to go through the true capillary, you could sneak around, right? If all the sphincters are closed, we could take a shunt, also known as a meta-arterial or an anastomosis, to go around the city. Okay, I hit the words, just make sure you see them there. We got the precapillary sphincters, regulate flow. It's got it all here. Use that 5-star image to talk your way through this. Lots of questions on this part. Lots of different ways. But it's more of a thinking thing than a memorizing thing. Okay. There we go. I don't know why they flipped the direction, but here's my arterial side. There's my venual side. Apparently the sphincters are open. I'm going through the bed. This is a true bed. And apparently I'm exchanging here. If I close it off, well, I can't go into town. I can only go across the mid-arterial. Right? That's the thing there, the shunt. If it's further away from town, we'd call it an anastomosis, but you could call that an anastomosis there as well. That's what it is. You can use them interchangeably. So that's just showing you so you can see sphincters open, sphincters closed, blood go through, blood doesn't go through. If you can't go through, go around. You can't go backwards. Okay, capillaries unite. It's a political message. We'll just put that in our yards this week. Capillaries unite. Form venules. Right, confluence, got it. And then they form bigger veins, and then bigger veins, and then bigger veins, and then bigger veins, which are all about holding blood. Large lumens. Big pipes. We'll see the difference in a second here. I don't remember exactly where. Pressure is lower, right? Remember, when it goes to the vena cava, it's nothing. When it starts at the caps, it's what? It's low, but not zero, right? Somewhere about 30. Just to remind you there, blood pressure is very much lower than the arteries. Artery still has the heart pumping. You can still feel that. 65 is their number. Hey, it's 2/3. Capacitance. Blood reservoirs. This is where most of your blood is in your body, is in a vein right now. Okay. The problem again is this. You're weird looking foot. So remember, if blood is down here and we just exchanged it, you have to get it back up. But there's no pump. So what this is saying is veins have adaptations to ensure the return, even if it has to fight gravity the whole way. So there are some things that help. One of them is the super large lumens. I have a big giant pipe like this. I can flow through without much of a problem, so I have very little resistance. I'm not going to bang the wall too much. I'm not going very fast, and I've got a lot of room to move. So there's one way, just, they're bigger. We're going to figure out the mathematical rules to this in a while. They're big, giant pipes. There's the main reason. There's valves. There's valves in them. Arteries don't have valves. The veins do. And so do lymphatic tubes, which we're going to put a little note. Lymphatic tubes are very, very much like veins. Slow, low pressure valves. Okay, as you study this, it'll make more sense. This is one of those things where there's no story. It's just, okay. Here it is. How do you get venous return back? Well, one of the things we said is we could just do squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. We can squeeze our tunica media. The veins have tunica media. They don't have as much, but they do have it. And I can squeeze like toothpaste up, slowly, slowly, up my leg, all the way back to my heart. It's not the only thing that would work, but I could do that. So just squeezing, just doing peristalsis can do that. But you're sitting there, I notice when you're bored, you start bouncing your foot. How do you do this? Well, this is one reason you're doing it, is to get your venous blood back to your heart, is by fidgeting. Sit there still is a bad idea. Nobody should ever sit there still. Get up and move if you need to. So the muscular pump, so we call this, just dancing around, like this is showing, squeezes the tubes and pushes the blood up. So sometimes the tube can just squeeze itself. Sometimes muscles around the area squeeze the tube. And then notice the valves there to catch the blood. If you squeeze it up, you're caught in the valve, squeeze it up further, caught in the valve, and eventually make it back up. So this is where I usually draw this. What if the valves break? And they do as you get older. So if a valve breaks, you might have the You might have the blood pool out here. And that venous blood just kind of sits there and it doesn't ever move anywhere. It just sits there. And if you look at someone's parts of their body, you can see this sometimes. What are these things called? That's varicose veins. Varicose veins are veins where the valves are broken and the blood is just sitting there. You can't really get rid of it. I mean, you can do massage, but it doesn't really help you to move around because it's just a broken valve and nothing's helping it move. But this would be one reason for massage, if someone's doing it right. Help that blood move, help that venous blood move. Same reason for moving lymph is a good reason for a massage, to get the lymph moving around more. It's very slow, like toothpaste. You gotta force it to get up there. You could just breathe too. Once it gets up to the trunk of the body, just breathe in, breathe out, pushes that stuff up too. So 3 ways to get blood from your toes back up to your heart. I mean, you could think about, hey, the pipes are big. Yeah, there's these pumps from breathing and fidgeting, and then there's the squeezy layer of the tunica media. Alright, I do not like this chapter. I always feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over. Okay, circulatory. There's a good picture artery vein. Let's play here real quick. I see the lumen. Who's got a bigger one? Open the vein up. It fell flat. They often do that if there's no blood in it because they're so big. If I opened up that vein though, that lumen would be way bigger than the artery, maybe 3 times as big, right? It's just collapsed on itself. So I see a huge lumen compared to an artery. I often show you this. I mean, this looks like a nice tire almost, right? This is a flat tire. It's usually that easy to tell on pictures. If it's a nice inflated tire, that's the artery. If it's deflated tire, that's the vein. And it almost works on every picture of artery or vein that you ever see. You see a filled up tire and a flat one. One's the artery, one's the vein. You should see that this guy has more media layer, tunica media, more muscle. He's more squeezy. The vein has squeezy layer, it just doesn't use it as much, right? It does use it some to get that toothpaste going back up. But those arteries are very squeezy. The more muscular the artery, the more squeezy it will be. So big lumen, less tunica media. It's usually a very easy way to see that. What's all this blue scraggle out here? That's that tunica adventitia. They usually don't even show up or talk about. You'll see it out there scragglified. Where's tunica interna? Can you see it? It's just this little tiny purple layer. It's barely visible. There's a little teeny tiny wiggly purple layer here. That's tunica intima. It's hard to see, but it's just that one single epithelial layer. Most of that is just muscle. Okay, so differences between arteries and veins. I don't have too much more to do today. That's the good news. It's Thursday, isn't it? You can get on your test. You can take a break. Okay, here we go. Now I know you guys can handle no matter how I do this. So do it however I want. Most of your blood's in a vein. That's all that's saying. Most of your blood's in a vein. Capacitance vessels. I don't care that you know the numbers at all. Just saying your blood's not in your heart right now. It's not big enough. Why not big? Got 5 liters that don't fit. Hey, we know this, don't we? Shunt, blah, blah. Just make sure we know. I don't want to do that word. This word. We know they're the same. A shunt, a bypass, a medarterial, an anastomosis. This slide could probably be shut. I've already said it. It's just showing all the terms we can use for a bypass. Okay, let's do this a little bit. Just to give you something to work on. This is not intuitive to most people. So it is, but it isn't. I'm going to show you some weird symbols, how I keep up with this stuff. Remember, at some point you're going to want to relate this part here, this resistance story, PR, resistance. You're going to want to relate this to this image, 5-star image. It's going to be hard for me to explain how it's going to show up on the test, but I'll try. At some point, you're going to be asked, like, compare this vessel with that vessel. You're going to be asked, who's got the greater flow? Who's got the greater pressure? Who's got the greater peripheral resistance? And so on, and so on, and so on. Right now we're not there yet. Right now we're just learning the names of these things and the order and so on. But we're going to introduce this here. It's very physicsy feeling, unfortunately. So let's do flow. You've heard me say it. You already know what it is. Blood moving through a pipe. We know what flow is. Blood moving through a pipe within a certain time period. We call this blood flow, big F. Mils per minute. Most people can handle blood flow. Blood flow. Got it. Blood pressure. Right? Blood pressure is a pushing force. I've kind of made this point, but again, this chapter is it's very weird. Remember, that water in a water hose is trying to get out. It's trying to get out. The problem is there's rubber in the way. And it can't get out, therefore it goes where? Further down this way, right? That's what it's trying to do when you shoot water through a water hose. It's trying to get out. What if I ice picked the water hose? It's going to come out all the little holes, right? That's the whole point. But here, if the heart's here, there's the pump. Right? I'm pushing every 0.8 seconds. That's going to generate the force, right? This generates pressure, blood pressure. It is a hydrostatic force. It's the opposite of osmosis. We'll clarify that in the next chapter. Water is either pulled or pushed. It can be pulled by osmosis, or it can be pushed by hydrostasis. So we need to learn this is going to be called HP, is the way I'll call this, hydrostatic pressure, pushing force, water pushed. A flood knocks your car out. That's hydrostatic pressure. It's not osmosis that we're doing. So this is, you have a pump, it beats at a certain pressure. We'll learn the pressure, 120 over 80. We'll figure out what that means later. And the blood flows due to that push, right? There's a gradient. Something like this is very easy to think about. There's the heart, there's the toes, beautiful toes. As I go this way, what happens to the pressure? Well, it's high here, but by the time we get here, it's lower. And that's all it's saying. The pressure gradient drives that motion. It's highest where the pump is. It's lowest, the furthest away from the pump. That's the whole idea. We have a high pressure pump. As it moves through the system, it slowly loses pressure. And the only way it's going to get pressure is to come back to the pump to get pumped out again. This is called blood pressure. That's what blood pressure is, the heart pushing blood through a tube. That tube is smashing against the walls, causing pressure. It wants to escape, but it can't because it's locked in. We measure it in, what's this? Mmug. What's mmug? What's that mean? Millimeters of mercury. You probably should know the unit of blood pressure, especially if you're going to be a nurse and you're going to take blood pressure all the time. Sometimes patients ask you about this and you say, oh, well, that's a little, my nurse has no idea what blood pressure is. That's kind of scary. So millimeters of mercury is the unit, 120 millimeters of mercury over 80 millimeters of mercury. We'll get to that story when we get there. So there's pressure and flow. Let's do this now. How is blood pressure related to flow? Put a symbol in the middle. And we don't want less than, and we don't want equal to. What must I want here? Think to yourself, as blood pressure goes up, what happens to flow? It goes up too, doesn't it? Harder I pump, faster the flow. This is a proportional thing. Again, you could go blood pressure down, flow down, but that fish takes care of both directions. As one goes up, the other goes up. As pressure increases, flow increases. As blood pressure decreases, flow also decreases. Right? Heart beats faster, flow increases. Heart beats slower, flow drops. Right? These are kinds of things to think about. Everyone knew this already. But to put it like this, where people's brains start freaking out. Oh, look at that symbol. Just think for a minute, right? Blood pressure is proportional to flow. The more the pressure, the more the flow. The lower the pressure, the lower the flow. Okay, I'm just going to keep repeating this theme here. Let's try it. PR opposes flow. Remember, as I'm trying to bang into the walls up there, that's going to slow me down, right? That's peripheral resistance. Peripheral resistance is slowing me down. Think of it as banging. You can think of it as banging into the wall. It helps. Every time I bang, I'm going to slow down. My flow is going to slow, right? So let's look here. PR, peripheral resistance, flow. What symbol goes here? Okay, as peripheral resistance goes up, what happens to my flow? It drops. It opposes flow. Symbol is what? Inverted. Right? Remember this in math when he said, when will I ever need that? Inverse proportion. So that's an inverse proportion. Instead of 2, it's 1/2, half. So you can say peripheral resistance is inversely proportional to flow. That's the fancy way to say that it opposes it. If one goes up, the other goes down. They're inverses. Age and beauty, right? Age increases, beauty drops. From what they tell me. Inverse proportion. Okay. If you do this, it works, but most people don't do this way. You don't have to, you could just memorize some of this stuff. It's about friction, remember, bang the wall. And that is exactly what I just said. Blood flow is inversely proportional to peripheral resistance. If I just left it there, it wouldn't make any sense. Now we know what it means though. They're inversely related. 3 important sources of resistance. Let's think real quick. What's blood viscosity? What is that? Thickness of the blood, right? If you have, let's do this, V and PR. What symbol? Let's do the thinking. If my blood becomes thick, is that going to increase the resistance? Yeah, try sucking molasses through a straw instead of soda. It's super hard, right? So this is what? As viscosity goes up, resistance goes up with it. Slam-a-dam-a-ding-dong. Which is also, boom, right? If you know algebra, you can now remove the middle term. Right? I know it sucks. Algebra, I don't need that for life. It makes things easier if you do know it. You can just memorize these words. But I want to show you, as viscosity goes up, that means resistance goes up with it, which means flow decreases. Remember, the test isn't tomorrow, but this is where it gets gross. You try to think. And then when you try to compare these things with different parts of this, that's where it gets hard. So I'm showing you where it gets sticky. It's not going to kill your grade if you don't understand all this completely. But once you have 3 terms in the system, you can drop the middle one out, and I think, okay, now I know that viscosity is inversely proportional to flow. Logically, that makes sense. But sometimes logic fails us on the test. Okay, let's try a different one here. Vessel length. Remember, what is peripheral resistance? What should you think about if you can? Banging against the wall. If I have a very long blood vessel compared to a very short blood vessel, who am I going to bang against more? Bingo, the long one. So as my length increases, what happens to my peripheral resistance?
What's up?
The longer I am, the more banging, that's a proportion, right? The longer the vessel is going to slow down my flow. Again, logically it makes sense. If I have a big long tube, I'm going to slap the walls more. That works on the test. If you're a mathematical person, this works. Choose the way that you want it to work. There are other ways to think about this too. But the longer it is, more resistance. More banging, less flow. Okay. What about blood vessel diameter? What's that mean? How big the pipe is, right? So yeah, this one's opposite, right? So just think real quick. I have a little skinny pipe. I have a big wall of pipe. Who am I going to bang into the walls more with? The little skinny pipe. I'm going to be banging all the time. And this big pipe, I might be just flowing down the middle and I don't have any problems whatsoever. So as diameter increases, what happens to the resistance?
It decreases.
As diameter gets bigger, resistance drops. So that's an inverse, right? Then you can throw. Right? You can flip this and say diameter is proportional to flow. You can cheat like that. The bigger the D, the bigger the gap. These are just tricks I use. A lot of people hate this part. They don't want to do this. It's okay, you just have to take a test on it. So this is some of the reason why the test grades drop. When these questions come, it's like, oh, I don't know how to do this. Sometimes just draw a little picture of pipes and think about how much I'll bang into the walls. And sometimes that's how to do these things. So if it looks like gibberish there, don't try to figure out the gibberish. Try to figure out in some other way. I don't know how the videos are. This is explaining that. What if I just left this here for your slides? That's why I draw a picture. Because no one knows what double the radius, no one knows what that means. Well, some of you might. But if I try that, there's a bomb on the test right there. As soon as you add math to a test, there goes the curve right there. So this is just saying what I was trying to get you to think about things. If you understand mathematics, fine, but if you don't try to figure it out right now. Just memorize, right? So I'm going to combine these ideas with this 5-star picture. I'll say compare this place to this place. How's the flow? How's the resistance? What's the pressure? And so on and so on. You got to think. It's not anything you can put on a card and memorize every combination. So that causes some issues. But I'll go over it more. You know what to do as far as studying goes on this. I'm going to stop today. And then we'll start blood pressure for real next time and sit through here. Bring some pens if you want to draw some pictures of all this. This picture sucks. And so we're going to draw it way better. And this one. And another one. So we're going to draw some blood tubes, but that's horrible. I don't know. They should get fired every day. Okay, if you don't know your test grade and you want to come check it out, you can do that. You can't have them back, but you can see your grades at any point because I've got them on my computer. I'm done blobbing today. So study. I'll be here for a while.